Have you ever had a stretch of days, maybe even weeks, that felt like you were just running this relentless, frantic sprint?
Oh, absolutely.
Heart pounding, constantly trying to clear the inbox, check off the boxes, and you're just completely convinced that if you just went a little bit faster, you'd finally catch up and, I don't know, find some peace.
You get to the finish line, but the finish line keeps moving.
It keeps moving, exactly. So, okay, now take a breath with me for a second and contrast that feeling with a moment in nature. Imagine stepping onto a beach and just watching the ocean waves roll in. They arrive with this steady, magnificent pulse, never faster, never slower.
Always right on time.
Always right on time. They crash, they retreat, they crash again. That gap, that dissonance between our constant human sprint and this natural, patient pulse is exactly what we're going to be tackling today.
And that dissonance, that's really the root of modern burnout. I mean, that natural pulse you're describing, it's not just for the ocean or the changing of the seasons. It is, and this is not an exaggeration, the operating system of everything.
It's the operating system. I like that.
It really is. It governs your biology, the beat of your heart, your sleep cycle. It influences your business thinking, your creative spark, the dynamics of your relationships. When you ignore this fundamental law of rhythm, well, that's when chaos happens.
Right.
But when you learn to align with it, that's where you find, sustained success and vitality without falling into that classic hustle culture trap.
So our mission in this deep dive is to sort of synthesize the foundational principles of this rhythm and to give you what the source material so brilliantly calls X-ray glasses.
Yeah.
And these aren't for reading minds, but for seeing that hidden signal that's always running underneath the daily noise, the rise, the fall, the ebb, the flow of energy that is absolutely unique to you.
And we should be really clear here. We're explicitly moving away from that rigid, checklist mindset.
Yeah.
This is not about trying to fit yourself into someone else's 5 a.m. productivity routine.
Thank goodness.
Right. We're trying to teach you how to become an expert surfer of your own energy arcs instead of constantly being thrown off balance by them.
I love that surfing analogy.
You have to be perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
An expert surfer. Their success isn't about brute strength or just paddling furiously all the time.
No.
It's about strategic timing. It's knowing precisely when to wax the board, when to paddle out, and then allowing the wave's massive natural momentum to do all the heavy lifting for you.
Okay, so to do that, we've structured this deep dive around 5 core, really actionable ideas that form a kind of foundational framework. First, we're going to get into pattern recognition, so seeing those predictable cycles underneath the chaotic surface of daily life.
Right, the signal and the noise.
Exactly. Second, we'll map the specific cycle phases, the universal anatomy of every rhythm, from a single day to, say, a major project.
Right.
Third, we'll learn to read the early warning signs. This is a big one. So you can stop being blindsided by those sudden energy dips and crashes.
The courtesy tap on the shoulder.
The courtesy tap. I love that. Fourth, we'll get into strategic alignment across the most crucial domains: career, money, relationships. And then finally, we'll discuss integration, which is, learning how to conduct the entire complex orchestra of your life.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, let's dive in.
So let's start by defining the law of rhythm itself. Where does this idea even come from?
Philosophically, the principle has roots in the ancient Hermetic tradition.
Okay, so this is not a new idea.
Not at all. It was described as a sort of cosmic seesaw. Everything flows out and in, everything has its natural tides, and all things rise and fall in a predictable measure.
A predictable measure.
Crucially, yes. And the measure of the swing to the right, to the peak, is always precisely the measure of the swing to the left, to the trough.
So you can't have one without the other.
You cannot. There is no peak without a proportionate valley that has to follow. What I find so, reassuring about that is how modern science and biology just completely confirm that ancient wisdom.
They really do.
We aren't separate from this law. We are rhythm. We're rhythm made manifest. I mean, staying alive is simply the continuous act of maintaining rhythm.
Great about it.
Your lungs expand and deflate. Your heart, signals pulse through your heart. Neurons spark, then they pause, then they spark again.
Right.
If any of those cycles stop, you stop. We can't escape it because it literally is us.
And yet we spend so much of our professional energy trying to just bulldoze right through it. Nature runs on this, pristine cyclical clock, but we try to force our lives into a rigid linear production schedule.
I have a very personal and frankly pretty painful example of what happens when you try to deny that.
Oh, yeah.
The source material calls it the first collision with rhythm denial. So Early in my career, I landed what I thought was my dream job at a hyper-growth startup. And the culture there, it wasn't just fast. It actively celebrated all-nighters, back-to-back product sprints, and that highly caffeinated bravado that makes you feel temporarily invincible.
I know that culture well. You're all riding an adrenaline peak together.
Totally. But absolutely nobody, especially on the leadership team, understood that human neurochemistry cannot sustain that pace forever. It just can't.
So how did you first realize the system was failing?
Hmm.
Did it show up as just, clear physical exhaustion, or was it something subtler?
That's where the denial gets so insidious. It didn't look like exhaustion at first. It masqueraded as cognitive failure and, honestly, emotional instability. First, there was this lingering physical sickness, like a cold I just couldn't shake for a month. Then came the debilitating brain fog. I'd forget simple details, names of key contacts, or like how to do routine things I'd done 100 times.
Oh, wow.
And finally, my mood it tanked. Projects that had once electrified me felt like I was dragging wet sand. I went to the doctor totally convinced I had some rare infection, ready to blame some external force.
And what was the actual diagnosis?
My doctor barely ordered any tests. She just looked at my schedule, my stress markers, and she delivered this not-negotiable truth. She said, and I'll never forget this, "Your body is demanding the downtime you refuse to schedule.
Wow.
You can grant it willingly, or it will keep taking it by force."
That is powerful.
Her prescription wasn't a new medication. It was mandatory rest, significantly limited screen time, and absolute sleep hygiene. It was humiliating, but also a profoundly simple lesson that the exhale I had been postponing was now completely inevitable. The cost of denying it was so much higher than the cost of just honoring the cycle in the first place.
That is the foundational realization, isn't it? Our lives are not meant to be flat or just linearly accelerating. They're supposed to pulse. And when we resist that pulse, we mislabel the natural valley as a failure.
And the really frustrating part is that we feel these rhythms every single day. We dismiss them. I mean, take the classic mid-afternoon crash.
Oh, yeah. Run 2 or 3 o'clock.
Exactly. Your concentration just slumps, your eyelids feel heavy. This isn't laziness, and it's certainly not a moral failing. It's a beautifully timed biological signal.
It's tied to 2 factors, right? The post-lunch dip in your core body temperature and a temporary natural rise in melatonin, the hormone that cues sleep.
Right. Your body's biologically primed for a 20-minute pause.
Exactly. And you can see the conflict this creates in different cultural norms. Cultures with strong siesta traditions, especially in the Mediterranean or Latin America, they just lean into that dip. They allow for a brief restorative rest. They harmonize with it.
Right.
But hustle cultures, the ones often fueled by competitive capitalism, they demonize that exact same biological signal. They call it sloth or lack of dedication. The pattern hasn't changed. That energy dip is universal.
Yes.
Only our societal story about it has shifted to one of resistance.
And this oscillation, it's not just physical. It's fundamental to all higher functions, especially creativity. The source material references the author Alice Walker, who, early in her career, would panic during her dry spells. She was convinced her gift had just permanently deserted her.
So she'd try to force the writing.
She'd try to force it, frantically. But over multiple cycles, she gained this wisdom and realized the drought wasn't death. It was the essential gestation phase. The empty field was just lying fallow.
And that fallow period is the very definition of restoration. Life refuses to behave like a straight line. It oscillates peak and valley, crescendo, decrescendo.
Right.
The valley isn't a punishment or a failure. It is the necessary precursor that enables the next peak. If a muscle fiber never gets time to rebuild after strain, it atrophies. If intellectual work never gets time to integrate, it just vanishes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Even sadness serves a vital function. It prompts you to ruminate, to process emotionally, and ultimately to grow. To live only at that exhilarating high peak pole is, in effect, to arrest your own development.
So, if the cycles are so natural, so biological, why is the cultural resistance so profound? Why do we keep falling for the hustle trap?
The primary driver is this seductive but completely false myth of endless upward motion.
Right. The staircase to success.
The ever-rising linear staircase. We reward the visible peaks, the product launch, the promotion, the graduation, while that messy, critical gestation period in between is either rushed, ignored, or actively hidden. No one posts on social media about their month of quiet, necessary reading.
And it's an incredibly profitable myth.
Oh, hugely. The constant anxiety that you must always be improving creates this entire industrial market built on speed and optimization.
High-dose caffeine products, productivity apps promising 10x output.
Endless self-optimization formulas. If everyone just slowed down enough to sense their true, sustainable rhythm, a lot of that market, which is built on fear and scarcity, would just collapse.
So where did this start? Where can we trace this back to?
We can trace this resistance back to a pretty crucial moment in history, the Industrial Revolution. Before that, labor followed natural agricultural cycles. Right. It was enforced by weather, daylight, season. You couldn't force a crop to grow faster.
Right, you worked with nature.
Exactly. But with the invention of the steam engine and the electric light bulb, suddenly machines could run day and night without rest, and humans were forced to follow the rhythm of the machine, not the sun.
And idle time became money lost.
And stillness was swiftly and powerfully recast as sloth.
And tragically, technology ensured that that factory bell followed us everywhere. The source material mentions how the first BlackBerry was marketed as giving you freedom, but it quickly became known as the crackberry.
Because suddenly you were expected to answer messages within minutes, at any hour of the day or night.
Exactly. Remote work and smartphones have only amplified that. They've carried that factory bell from the factory floor right into our bedrooms and onto our dinner tables.
And when you continuously override that natural dip, when you substitute biological restoration for caffeine and brute force, you pay a severe physiological cost.
Okay, so what's actually happening in the body?
Instead of letting your body rest and process, you inject a stimulant. Caffeine blocks your adenosine receptors, making you feel alert, but the adenosine is still building up.
It's just being masked.
It's being masked.
Right.
And meanwhile, your stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, rise sharply to fuel that forced second wind.
What happens when that becomes chronic, when you do that day after day?
Chronic override means your baseline cortisol remains elevated. This suppresses serotonin and melatonin, which leads to sleep disruption. But perhaps most damagingly, high prolonged cortisol exposure actually impairs the hippocampus,
The part of the brain for memory.
the brain region critical for memory formation and retrieval. That brain fog you experienced at the startup wasn't just fatigue. It was the physical cost of forcing a rhythm that didn't exist.
That makes perfect sense. We really do forget that we share these mammalian constraints. You know, you look at a cheetah and you admire its speed, 60 miles per hour. But we forget the second half of that equation. A cheetah only sprints for short bursts, and afterward, it has to rest for up to 20 hours. Otherwise, its muscles and nervous system will literally fail.
And we demand of ourselves a pace that even an apex predator can't sustain.
Yeah. The cost of ignoring this is visible everywhere. I mean, stress and anxiety linked to overwork cost the global economy an estimated $1 trillion in lost productivity every year.
1 trillion. It's staggering.
Yeah.
And Gallup reports that roughly 8 out of 10 workers are quietly quitting or just grinding through their days with minimal enthusiasm.
And then there's the horrifying extreme. In Japan, they have the term korishi.
Literally death by overwork. It was documented after surges of fatal strokes and heart attacks in workers who were pulling continuous 90-hour weeks.
It's institutionalized rhythm denial.
It is, and the body's demand for rest is not a request, it's a law. The source shares this powerful anecdote about an ER nurse named Sophia who completely embodied this resistance. She was a hero, prided herself on double shifts, wore her step count like a badge of honor. To keep going, she stopped drinking water, ignored hunger cues, and survived on pure adrenaline.
Wow.
After one particularly brutal streak, she walked out of the hospital, sat behind the wheel of her car, and she just stayed there until morning.
Why? What happened?
She couldn't remember how to drive home.
Oh my gosh.
Her body had simply switched off the cognitive ability necessary for complex tasks, demanding the rest she refused to schedule. That kind of collapse is the ultimate statement that rhythms do not negotiate, even with the most dedicated among us.
That's a powerful story.
The profound realization here is simple. The sooner we start listening to the quiet signals, that courtesy tap on the shoulder, the less likely we are to suffer these dramatic, life-altering consequences.
Okay, so that's the problem. That's the resistance. How do we shift? How do we move from just recognizing this in the abstract to actually mapping the specific rhythm that is unique to each of us?
That's the perfect question, and it's our second big idea. It begins by understanding the multiple overlapping layers of rhythm operating inside every single one of us. And remember, these layers vary wildly, even between genetically identical twins.
So there's no one-size-fits-all map?
None at all. We have 3 primary rhythmic layers. First, the circadian rhythm. This is the 24-hour cycle that manages your master clock.
Right, the lark versus the owl.
Exactly. This dictates core body temperature, hormone release like cortisol in the morning, melatonin at night, and your general alertness cues.
Okay, so that's the big daily one. What's next?
Then there's a smaller, faster pulse called the ultradian rhythm.
Ultradian.
This is the roughly 90-minute pulse of focused attention. Your alertness rises for about 70 to 100 minutes. That's a focus crescendo. And then it naturally recedes for about 20 minutes.
And that's the moment we tend to just power through with more coffee.
Precisely. We power through that 20-minute plea for a micro rest. And that's exactly what triggers the scramble for adrenaline and those scattered, fragmented thoughts instead of genuine restoration.
So if you actually honored that 20 minutes...
If you honor it, take a walk, stretch, just stare out the window, you reset the clock and you get another 90 minutes of high-quality focus. Ignore it, and you spend the next hour just running on fumes.
Okay, so circadian, ultradian. What's the third layer?
The third is the infradian rhythm, which spans weeks or even months.
Okay, so longer term.
Much longer. This covers things like the menstrual cycle, which profoundly impacts energy, mood, and cognitive function for women. And it also covers seasonal mood oscillations. For instance, the reduced light in winter naturally lowers serotonin levels, often coaxing us into a state of inward reflection, a kind of hibernation.
So the practical goal here is just simplicity, right? We're trying to map this highly complex, layered energy using really simple tools.
Exactly. We're not asking you to go out and buy expensive biofeedback sensors. The simple act of making the invisible visible is what empowers the change. A pen and paper, a note on your phone where you track your energy levels on a scale of 1 to 10 alongside your activities, that is profoundly powerful.
So how do we gather that data reliably? I think that's where people get stuck.
We do it by paying attention to the early warning signs. These are, as the source describes them, nature's courtesy tap on the shoulder. They're the subtle signals that save us from the dramatic plot twist of full-blown burnout or conflict.
Okay, and these signs appear across 4 distinct channels.
It's right. 4 channels. First is the physical channel. You have to become an intimate observer of your body's current state. Notice things like muscle tone. Does it feel springy and ready for action, or reluctant and heavy?
Or appetite shifts, you mentioned.
Exactly. In a preparation or the wintering phase, you might notice a sudden, powerful craving for warming root vegetables and slow-cooked stews. Your body is telling you what it needs.
And we can get really specific here. I was fascinated by the story of Ravi, the software architect.
Oh yeah, the peripheral temperature.
Tell us about that.
He discovered that his peripheral temperature was a predictor. He realized his hands and feet would get noticeably colder about 3 days before he dipped into a major mental low-focus phase.
Wow.
So by monitoring this simple, consistent biometric, he was able to proactively schedule lighter, more mechanical workloads in advance. He avoided the frustration of trying to code with a cloudy mind.
That's incredible. Okay, so that's physical. What's the second channel?
The second is the emotional channel. Your emotions are not obstacles. They are interior weather reports. They give you vital information about the phase you are entering.
So like excitement mixed with nervousness.
That often signals the start of the preparation phase. The body is gathering, kindling, feeling the anticipation. Conversely, that persistent restlessness or ennui often precedes an impending rest or a major action phase.
It's about not judging the emotion, just observing it.
Exactly. We discussed Maria, the executive, who initially fought her mood. She tracked her cycles and realized that 2 or 3 days of persistent ennui, that slightly flat gray zone, almost always preceded a massive creative epiphany.
But only she didn't panic.
Provided she didn't panic and frantically force activity, she learned to respect that gray zone, treating it not as depression, but as a necessary fallow period leading to insight.
Okay. Physical, emotional. What's third?
Third is the cognitive channel. This is maybe the simplest one to measure. Just watch for cognitive static.
Like fumbling Excel formulas or rereading the same email 5 times?
Exactly. Brain fog signals a need for immediate idle time and integration. Conversely, if you suddenly experience those high-clarity windows where you can draft a complex document in one focused, feverish sitting, you know you're in an action peak that you should actively protect from interruption.
Makes sense. And the fourth channel.
And finally, the environmental channel. This is about external cues signaling internal needs. It's often the most overlooked.
So your environment mirrors your internal state.
It often does.
Yeah.
I love the anecdote about Nina, the UX designer, who tracked her own workload capacity using her houseplants.
Her houseplants.
Yeah. Whenever the foliage looked limp, dusty, and neglected, She knew her own nervous system was equally strained. So she'd consciously trim her client roster and enforce rest. And she found that as her plants recovered, so did her sleep schedule and her focus.
That is brilliant. Okay, so once you have this data, once you see the repeated patterns, the next step is putting it to work. It's strategic alignment.
Strategic alignment is where you restructure your external commitments to actually match your internal reality. Let's look at the weekly waves example with Dana, the graphic designer.
Okay.
Through tracking, she discovered her creative zenith was reliably Monday morning and Thursday afternoon. But her expressive spark dimmed significantly by Wednesday, the dreaded Wednesday slog.
We've all been there.
We all have. So instead of forcing herself to power through Wednesday, she completely swapped her calendar. She slotted all her demanding concept sketches and initial brainstorms into her peak times.
Monday and Thursday?
Right. And she moved the tedious but necessary admin tasks, invoicing, and email processing to midweek.
And the result?
Her output quality became steadier, she stopped wasting peak energy on mechanical tasks, and crucially, she stopped blaming herself for her natural dips.
And we can zoom out even further, right? To seasonal signatures.
Absolutely. Consider Daniel, the entrepreneur in São Paulo. He noticed his best ideation season arrived reliably during Brazil's June and July winter weeks. The cooler temperatures just naturally encourage reflection and inward focus.
But that was months before his prime launch season.
It was 5 months before his prime launch season in November. His strategic alignment meant reserving June and July explicitly for deep internal brainstorming retreats rather than overloading those months with networking. This foresight allowed him to align his inner rhythm with his external business strategy.
So the launch in November was based on well-thought-out, deeply integrated ideas. This is so powerful. So now that we know how to map these waves, we need to understand the anatomy of the wave itself, the 4 repeating stages that every single cycle moves through.
Yes. Recognizing these 4 phases, preparation, action, harvest, and rest, is the key to eliminating the mystery from your circumstances and stopping that self-judgment.
So let's start with phase 1, preparation. The source calls it the quiet forge.
A great name for it.
It really is. The analogy is a seed buried deep underground. To an observer, it looks completely dormant. It looks like nothing is happening. But biochemically, inside that seed, fireworks are happening. Complex systems are building the roots, gathering energy.
The energy in this phase is highly introspective.
Yeah.
Resources are diverting inward.
And it often looks like procrastination.
It does. It looks like unproductive downtime, but it is crucial, unseen labor. It's the time for gathering kindling, for deep, disorganized reading, for reviewing old journals, or just allowing ideas to marinate without pressure.
Patience is the key word here.
Patience above all else. If you judge yourself by visible, outward output during this phase, you will feel constant failure.
And the risk of rushing it is immense. It's like a sprinter skipping warm-ups and wondering why they pull a hamstring.
Exactly. The entire structure of the future effort depends on the strength you build during this quiet forge.
Okay, so after preparation comes phase 2, action or the surge.
This phase bursts forth like the first day of spring. The seedling shoots above ground and drinks the sun. This is extroverted, forward-tilted energy.
This is when you're making those high-stakes calls, writing 3,000 words before 9 a.m.
Feeling genuinely unstoppable. The focus is externalized and efficient.
Action is exhilarating, but this is where the warning comes in, right? This is a crucial moment for self-awareness.
A huge moment. Adrenaline masks fatigue perfectly during this time. You have to ride the momentum intensely, but you absolutely cannot mistake this surge for your permanent sustainable state.
It's unsustainable by definition.
It is. The key wisdom here is knowing that no storm stays overhead forever. So you ride that wave hard while you can, but you are already mentally planning for the inevitable wind down.
So that brings us to phase 3, harvest. This is the time for reaping and reflecting.
This is your autumn. The initial push is over, and your attention shifts entirely from speed and generation to nuance and consolidation.
So you're editing, you're refining, you're gathering feedback, checking metrics.
Doing quality assurance, not generating new ideas.
And celebration and reflection are critically important rituals here.
They're essential. Skipping the acknowledgement robs your psyche of the necessary closure for the cycle. The source mentioned a CDO who instituted mandatory celebratory post-launch retrospectives.
And staff turnover dropped by 50%.
By 50%. By honoring the harvest, they integrated the learning and lowered the systemic stress.
And the emotional landscape can shift here too. A little bit of melancholy is natural in this phase.
Very natural. It's the nervous system gracefully lowering its voltage after the intense high of the action phase. It's not sadness, it's closure.
Okay, which leads us to the final and maybe most resisted phase, phase 4, rest, or the fertile void.
Winter. The branch looks completely bare, appearing still and silent. But intensive restoration is happening unseen. The sap retreats to the roots. The soil replenishes its minerals.
Modern culture treats rest as optional, a luxury granted after everything else is done.
But biology treats it as law.
And the science confirms this isn't passive time, right?
Not at all. This is when the default mode network in your brain activates. It's processing memories, integrating complex learning, and crucially sparking the creative insights that often arrive when you're completely distracted.
This is why breakthroughs happen in the shower.
It is. Even highly intelligent mammals operate this way. We mentioned dolphins who literally shut down one half of their brain at a time to maintain vigilance while resting the other half. They understand rest is non-negotiable.
And the consequences of ignoring this phase are severe. My own personal experience with post-tour bronchitis perfectly illustrated this for me.
Right, you were laid up for a month.
For a month. After a rigorous schedule where I skipped almost all opportunities for genuine decompression, my body enforced the rest I refused to grant. The body doesn't send requests, it imposes sanctions.
You must grant rest willingly, or the body takes it by force.
Exactly. Okay, so we've mapped the waves, we understand the 4 universal phases. Now for, I think, the most valuable part of this deep dive, how does this 4-phase cycle apply specifically to the major domains of our lives? Let's start with career.
Yes, because professional life is where we most often ignore rhythm in favor of constant production.
Right.
Professional life is fundamentally pulsed. It moves in growth, spurts of emotion, successful launches, and these are followed by plateaus. And we often fear the plateau. We feel it equals stagnation or failure.
But the plateau is actually the critical integration phase.
It is. It's where the high-level growth is solidified and internalized. It's the training ground disguised as boredom.
Like Victor, the software engineer.
Tell that story.
After shipping a huge, highly visible new feature, he spent 9 months doing tedious, low-visibility bug fixes and systems maintenance. He felt stalled, fearing his career had peaked. But those 9 months sharpened his fundamental pattern recognition skills to such a degree that when the time came for a massive architecture overhaul, he was promoted directly to technical lead because he knew the system's weaknesses so intimately.
The plateau was the hidden preparation for his next surge.
Exactly. So when it comes to timing big career moves, asking for a raise, pitching a new venture, you have to align these actions with your internal drumbeat.
If you are in your high-energy action phase, your confidence is vivid, your arguments are clear, you project competence, that's when you negotiate.
And if you try to do it in your rest phase,
Your self-doubt and lower energy will just dilute your entire message.
so if you are in a low phase, you use it for preparation, not for panicked action. I'm thinking of Monica, the marketing director.
Right. She felt burned out and wanted to quit.
But instead of just launching immediately, she honored her low phase. She used that time for deep market research, auditing her skills, and some quiet, low-pressure networking.
So when her internal energy surged, months later,
She launched her new consulting practice swiftly and successfully because all that foundational groundwork had already been done, completely guilt-free.
and this rhythmic intelligence is also critical for managing teams, especially now when cycles are almost never synchronized.
Ah, the asynchrony problem. Like Len and Priya, the co-executives.
A classic case. Len was a natural sprinter. He'd peak quickly and then need deep rest. Priya was a steady pacer, maintaining high output over long periods.
And their conflict came because Len saw Priya as too slow, and Priya saw Len as unreliable.
Right. They resolved this by staggering tasks based on their phase compatibility. They leveraged Len's short, intense spikes for rapid-fire decision-making and crisis management.
And they used Priya's steady pace for the long-haul analysis and strategy integration.
They didn't change their fundamental nature, they just synchronized the relay.
That's so smart. Okay, let's pivot now to financial rhythms. The inhale and exhale of money. You might not think of money as having a cycle, but it absolutely does.
It does. And the earliest signals of financial distress or opportunity are intensely biological.
How so?
Our stress hormones directly influence our financial decisions. High cortisol levels from exhaustion or fear significantly impact the prefrontal cortex. That lowers your capacity for long-term planning and increases either risk aversion or, sometimes, highly volatile risk-taking.
And exhaustion lowers willpower.
making money control a constant casualty.
This brings us to the scarcity spiral. That's a common trap during a financial low season, a financial winter.
Yes, when income slows or a large expense hits, the panic triggers. And instead of disciplined consolidation, many people panic spend, or even worse, they raid their long-term savings or retirement funds.
Damaging their future stability out of short-term terror.
The consolidation required in a financial winter is not about panic. It's about simplification, debt reduction, defense. It's creating a simple buffer, like a July-August savings line you establish during the high season, so that the silence in your inbox during slower months doesn't trigger existential terror.
It's about being deliberate.
Deliberate, yes. And abundance tests wisdom just as much as scarcity does. The harvest phase, the bonus, the windfall, the successful sale is so often squandered because we mistake temporary abundance for a permanent state.
Right. Like the founder who, after selling her company, immediately bought 2 Teslas and remodeled her home.
Leaving her asset-rich but dangerously cash-starved when a health crisis hit just 6 months later.
You contrast that with Daniel, the photographer.
Yes. After a successful show, he allocated a set, specific percentage for celebration, a new lens, a family trip. But he protected the remaining 80% by placing it in short-term bonds, specifically designed to weather the next inevitable financial low.
The principle is clear. You spend, invest, and give in ratios that respect the impermanence of any single financial phase.
Precisely.
Okay, moving into the really personal stuff. Relationship rhythms. The biggest challenge here is this cultural illusion of constant harmony.
Yes, that relationships, like great music, require both sound and space, closeness and distance. You cannot sustain an eternal crescendo.
And conflict so often arises not from opposing long-term goals, but from mismatched short-term phases.
Oh, absolutely. The story of Nadia and Julian is a perfect example. Her need for emotional connection would intensify precisely when his professional cycle nudged him into a deeply introspective strategy mode.
A preparation phase where he needed silence and intellectual distance.
Exactly. They weren't fighting over love or commitment. They were fighting over tempo and availability.
So what was their breakthrough?
They implemented a communication ritual, the Sunday night check-in. It was simple. They'd ask each other, what phase are you in this week? And what do you need from me?
So that converts those abstract undercurrents into tangible, forecastable reference points.
Yeah. And it allowed Nadia to prepare and grant that space willingly, rather than feeling abandoned by his silence.
And we also have to see that conflict itself can be a necessary offbeat that strengthens trust, rather than signaling doom.
Right. Think about Maya and Jeff, who constantly fought over dinner plans. She craved action and expansion, a new, trendy restaurant. He craved rest and comfort, ordering takeout and staying home.
Their fight wasn't about food.
Not at all. It was her action phase clashing with his rest phase. Once they identified the cyclical needs underneath the argument, they could compromise. They ordered the comfort food, but ate it in the living room with candles, a small concession to her need for novelty.
It's about seeing the rhythm underneath the surface issue.
Always.
Okay, finally, let's look at creative and personal growth cycles. This is maybe the most difficult rhythm to trust because it moves like a spiral, not a staircase.
Yes, you sometimes feel like you're retracing old ground, but you're actually just gaining altitude.
So the creative spiral has 4 discernible stages.
First, inspiration. It's that shy animal that often arrives when you're receptive, usually during the rest phase in the shower, on a walk.
Second, experimentation.
The messy prototyping, the play-before product, where things feel disorganized and uncertain. Third, breakthrough. That's the sudden click where all the disparate pieces snap together, often preceded by deep restlessness.
And fourth, reflection.
The necessary integration time, when that creative muscle knits itself stronger during the rest phase.
And understanding that spiral was the key to making sense of my own resistance. I mentioned my octopus detour when I was writing my book.
Right, you felt completely blocked.
It felt like absolute failure. I gave up on forcing it, and I just indulged in extensive research on a completely unrelated historical topic, a descent into the spiral. It felt like procrastination.
But that descent ultimately provided the unexpected metaphor you needed.
It slingshotted me upward into a 6,000-word day the following morning. You have to trust the descent and the seemingly unrelated meandering to enable a powerful ascent later.
You really do.
Okay, so this brings us to advanced navigation. We've got the basics down, but life isn't just one rhythm, is it?
No, as we moved into this advanced navigation, We have to acknowledge that life is not a single drum solo. It's a complex, multidimensional lattice of overlapping cycles.
Circadian, infradian, project-based, financial, relationship.
They're all happening at once. This is where we need the conductor mindset.
I like that. The conductor's goal isn't to ensure equal volume for all the instruments.
It's to achieve dynamic balance. You treat your life domains as instruments. Work is the brass, family is the woodwinds, personal health is the percussion, and you modulate the volume and tempo depending on the season.
This is so critical when cycles align in a challenging way. The example of Mara, the architect, really drove this home for me.
Oh, the catastrophic convergence.
Yes, she mapped her March calendar and saw a high-stakes design deadline, a mandatory marketing push, her daughter's sleep regression, and her own personal low-focus phase all hitting at the same time.
That sounds like a recipe for a breakdown. How did the map help her navigate it?
By visualizing the overlap, she saw she had zero slack. So she proactively negotiated. She shifted the non-essential marketing push to April. She hired temporary, dedicated childcare for 2 key nights to manage the sleep regression's impact.
And she blocked off her workday.
She blocked off the first 2 hours of her workday for critical design work only, refusing all meetings. She didn't eliminate the challenge, but she managed the volume, preventing a total collapse.
And that ability to pause is crucial. This is about understanding the strategic pause versus a full stop. A strategic pause is a deliberate, conscious suspension of outward motion for necessary internal recalibration.
And it requires slack.
It requires slack, the essential margin between your actual capacity and the demands placed upon you.
Yeah.
Slack is not wasted time, it's life insurance.
I learned that lesson profoundly with that consulting proposal I mentioned earlier.
Well, you pulled it at the last minute.
I was in a high-pressure action phase, but my gut was screaming mismatch, indicating my internal preparation phase was incomplete, so I chose a strategic pause. I pulled the proposal 48 hours before the deadline.
Which must have felt like a failure at the time.
It felt like fear. But 2 weeks later, that client's venture dissolved amid a huge scandal. The pause was actually intuition guided by rhythm, and it spared my reputation entirely.
And once you have that strategic mindset, you need to integrate rhythm into your daily life. We have to ditch the rigid, perfect routine preached by productivity gurus for a living, adaptive one.
Like a plant tilting toward the sunlight.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Your morning routine, for instance, needs to align with your earliest natural energy flicker, whether that's sparkling readiness at 6 a.m. or a gentle 40 minutes of stumbling toward the coffee pot.
Don't fight who you are biologically.
And the midday has to honor the circadian dip. The law firm partner Elena couldn't just stop billing, but she understood the need for micro-rest.
So she established a simple 10-minute ritual.
She would leave the office, find silence in a nearby courtyard, and just restore her equilibrium. It was a minimal adjustment, but it significantly boosted her cognitive endurance for the rest of the day.
And the evening routine is the crucial decrescendo, the time to cue your nervous system to release the day's armor.
Washing dishes, dimming the lights, anything that signals to your body that duty hours are over and restoration can begin. The governing principle here is negotiate, don't rebel.
I love the story of the consulting partner who just asked to move the 9 a.m. Monday meeting to 10 a.m.
He didn't just benefit himself. The whole team, which was generally not at peak focus at 9 a.m., benefited massively.
So this leads us to the lifelong commitment. This isn't a short-term hack.
No, it's about placing deep, abiding trust in something larger and more sustainable than just raw, sheer effort. It means making rhythm second nature through gentle, subtle cues.
You can start small. Change your calendar label from the punitive downtime to the generative of fallow field.
Or set your phone to grayscale during your lowest energy hours to cue rest. These small gestures anchor your commitment.
And finally, legacy. Share the map.
Yes, by actively teaching your rhythm, explaining the 4 phases to your partner, your team, your children, you grant everyone in your circle the psychological permission to honor their own cyclical needs.
Which fosters collective resilience and deeper understanding in all your relationships.
Exactly.
We started this deep dive feeling like we were running a frantic, unsustainable sprint against the steady, indifferent pulse of the ocean. We end it, hopefully, as more intentional navigators.
Capable of reading the swells, timing our paddle, and making peace with the inevitable retreat.
And remember that success is never measured by one day's overwhelming output or 1 week's productivity spike. It's measured over the full, long arc of the cycle.
The most important lesson is radical acceptance. That decline is not defeat, but necessary preparation for the next ascent.
And as you leave this discussion, hold on to that image of the spiral nature of life we talked about. You will touch the same cardinal directions over the years: joy, sorrow, success, failure. But because you're gaining altitude through conscious awareness, each time you pass that point, you do so with greater wisdom and a lot less panic.
The path that once looked like a confusing detour, the unrelated job, the messy creative phase, the needed lengthy sabbatical, it eventually reveals itself as the absolutely necessary root system for a later, far greater season of abundance.
So we'll leave you with one provocative thought to anchor this knowledge in the immediate future. What single activity will you schedule into your calendar this week that honors the phase you're actually in rather than the phase you wish you were in?
Will you trade that exhausting, unnecessary meeting for a necessary, guilt-free 90-minute rest block?
Go find your rhythm and trust its wisdom.